Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very exciting and promising day for the Gulf Coast, a region of our country that has suffered significantly in the last several years from a variety of storms, hurricanes, floods, and a major oil spill. The Gulf Coast Senators are united today across party lines to announce the introduction of the Restore Act. I want to first say that none of this would have been possible without the strong and tenacious support of the chair of the committee, the good senator from the state of California. The state of California is not going to directly benefit. There will be indirect benefits to the people of California, but she has stood at the side of the Gulf Coast senators, both Democrats and Republicans, to fashion a bill that we believe is the right thing to do, the smart thing to do, and the fair thing to do. Let me just briefly outline what the bill does and then make a few general remarks and then turn it over to Senator Dick Shelby, who led the effort on the Republican side, along with Senator Vitter and Senator Sessions, who are actually members of the committee in which this bill will go through, and I want to particularly thank them as well. This bill will dedicate 80% of the Clean Water Act penalties that are going to be charged to BP to restore the Gulf Coast. It will provide needed resources to the Gulf Coast states to start recovery immediately, both environmental recovery and economic recovery. It establishes the Gulf Coast Ecosystem Restoration Council, which is a joint federal-state council that will direct the spending of much of these funds, and it will establish a long-term science and fisheries endowment, the first time ever such a fund has been created in the Gulf. And I want to particularly thank Senator Nelson from Florida for his leadership in creating this fisheries endowment that all of us are proud to support. I want to just give a few stats and then turn it over to Senator Shelby for people to really understand what's at stake, at least from Louisiana's perspective. Louisiana is a great state that sits in the middle of our country, due south. We have lost 1,900 square miles of land since 1930, the size of the state of Rhode Island. There is the most aggressive, most frightening erosion of land in the entire continent of the United States is happening at the mouth of the Mississippi River, which is the Great Delta, which actually formed our state and parts of other states. We lose 25 square miles of wetlands each year and a football-sized field every 30 minutes. So this press conference may last 30 minutes. We will lose a football field size of land. We have 10 million people that live in the Gulf of Mexico, approximately, from Texas to Florida. These are hardworking citizens. They deserve the very best efforts of our federal government. Today they are seeing, hopefully, some of those efforts. 30% of the commercial fisheries in the United States comes from the shores of our state. We have a $1.7 billion economic impact just recreational fishing alone. 30% of the nation's crude oil supply and 34% of natural gas comes from this area of our country. And I might add that $3 trillion is contributed to the national economy by these Gulf Coast states. And finally, 17% of the national GDP comes from the Gulf Coast. So as I said, it's not in the direct interest of the people in California, which is so impressive that Senator Boxer has stood with us as strongly as she has. But it most certainly is in the indirect interest of every citizen in the United States to want to see the Gulf Coast be strengthened and flourish and use the penalties that BP, the polluter in this case, is going to have to pay to direct those penalties to restore this great ecosystem. We've been joined by Senator Nelson. Bill, before you came in, I gave you great credit for the creation of the Fisheries Endowment. And at this point, let me turn it over to Senator Shelby, who has led the negotiations along with Senator Vitter on the Republican side. We're very grateful to Senator Shelby for stepping up and taking the leadership on this important bill. Dick?
Thank you, Senator Landrieu. She's outlined this pretty well. I think most of you know the issues and you know that we have stuck together. I too want to commend Senator Boxer because she doesn't have, as we'd say, a dog in this particular fight, but she does care about the environment, as we all know, and she has really stepped forward to help us, the Gulf states that are affected by this, to come up with a remedy to help make us whole and restore a lot of environmental damage and economic damage. And this bill will do this, and I hope that we can expedite the passage of this and move on in the right direction to where we need to be on the Gulf. But I do want to thank all of our colleagues here. Everybody has had a piece in this, a part of it, and we're just now getting started big time, but with the help of the chairman from California, I think we're going to do well because we have merit in this proposal. Thank you.
Well, I'm here as the chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee to say to my colleagues, thank you for working so well together. This was not easy. I can recall several difficult meetings in my office with various colleagues.
We weren't in any trouble.
looking at Bill, looking at Richard. We had some very tough moments because, look, the damage that was done in the Gulf is serious, ecologically, environmentally, economically, and everybody feels strongly that when you have these potential revenues, that they are divided up in a fair way, that they are distributed in a fair way, that there's enough flexibility on the one hand, but enough discipline on the other so the funds go for what's supposed to go to. So every one of us could have written this differently, absolutely could have. But we recognize that we need to come to agreement. So what I want to say to Mary Landrieu in particular, who when I was about to give up called me at home at night and said, sorry to call you so late, but I still think that some life left in this. Talked to Marco Rubio, he's going to work with Bill, and then one night Jeff Sessions is good and Wicker is with us, and then we had a last-minute issue with Texas, and although they're not here, they are in the bill and they're supportive, and this was hard. But here's the deal. We're going to move forward. It will either be next week or it will be the week after. It will be before we leave on our summer break after we have resolved all of the problems that they're around us. And I do want to close with this. A lot of times we're ready to give up on this place because we are each passionate about why we're here and who we represent and what we fight for, and we all have different states with different needs and different politics. But what keeps me in this is the fact that every once in a while these magical moments happen where you find the sweet spot where people can come together, just give a little, get a little, go back and forth, and we come up with a solution. And so every member standing behind me and a couple of others who aren't here, they deserve all the praise. My role was really to encourage everybody to be willing to accept what the next guy needed until we got this to a place. The new bill, which reflects our negotiations, will be introduced today, as I understand it, by the Gulf state senators. We have a couple of things we're going to do in the committee, and we'll get this through. And I'm just thrilled to be here with all of you.
I was going to do it.
I got it.
Thank you very much. Roger Wicker from Mississippi. I appreciate some of my senior colleagues allowing me to go ahead of them. I have a meeting with Senator Cochran in 5 minutes, and I promised to be brief and still promise to be brief. I want to thank Senator Boxer for her leadership at the committee level, to Senator Shelby and Senator Landrieu and everyone who's had a hand in this. And Senator Cochran joins in this sentiment today. The premise of this legislation, which we've all agreed to, is that the penalties for this localized tragedy, this localized disaster, should be used for locally directed recovery priorities and to assist in the rebuilding and revival of the Gulf Coast. The bill will speed economic and environmental recovery to the Gulf Coast following last year's oil spill It represents a balanced approach by all Gulf state senators to support economic and environmental restoration. The Gulf Coast communities will have flexibility to meet their own needs. I'm pleased to mention in the case of Mississippi that this bill will promote Gulf Coast seafood. Gulf seafood was particularly damaged, not so much because the seafood itself was damaged, but because of the perception last year. And this bill will help us get the word out that Gulf Coast seafood is safe, reliable, and great to eat. So thank you very much for your cooperation. Senator Boxer, this does represent one of those happy moments of compromise, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to be part of it.
Thank you, sir.